Hello and welcome to another of Via Satellite's Thursday morning conversations. And we've got a really interesting one for you today. We're going to talk some very interesting findings from a survey that we've done with our good friends at ST Engineering iDirect. Taking part in this Thursday morning conversation, we have Frederick Simeons, who's the CTO of ST Engineering iDirect, and we have Yo Jalor, VP Market Development and Strategy of ST Engineering iDirect. So welcome, Yo. Welcome, Frederick. How are you both doing today?
Good morning.
Doing great, Mark. Good morning.
So let's get straight into it, because just to give our audience a little bit of a background here, we did a great survey in conjunction with ST Engineering iDirect, and we got a lot of end user responses and satellite industry responses about things they're looking for from technology, and particularly on the ground side as well. So there's a lot for us to dig into over the next 20 minutes. As I mentioned, it had a fantastic response from end users. There was one question, and we're going to start on this, that asked about which satellite improvement would be most beneficial for end users' future business. This was really getting right to the heart of the matter here. I would have thought that the answer would have been lower cost services. In fact, the answer that was coming back from end users was satcom, was better satcom and reliability and availability. So let me start with you, Frederick. What did you make of these findings, particularly if we look at what the end users were saying? Well, what was your take on this?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark. It's an interesting feedback that we got through the survey, but I think it's positive in a sense that for the end users, cost is really not the key concern. It's certainly not unimportant, but it's not their key concern. What they really want is better services over satellite. And if you think about it, I don't think that comes as a total surprise, because we know there are a lot of bandwidth hungry end customers out there, like cruise players or even aeronautical or enterprise players who really need a lot of bandwidth to serve their customers. If you think of a cruise vessel with 5,000 people on board, you cannot have enough bandwidth to serve all of them. And also, if you think about aeronautical applications, we do know that availability is not perfect yet. So there's no coverage everywhere on Earth yet, like the poles, for instance. So there's certainly still some room to improve availability and service quality. I also think that technology evolved a lot over the last 5 years. So if you would go back 5 years ago and you look at the service offering there and the service offering today, I think it's a big difference. And it also takes a while before those new services get to some of the end customers. For instance, in government market, we know there's certainly a lag between when new technologies come to market and when they can actually use it. But I think it's good, and it shows that the market, the end users, still need new technologies, and that's where companies like us are working on it to be able to give even higher throughputs and combine that with a better availability. For instance, offering lower signal to noise ratio, improving return link scalability. I think we have our well-known MXDMA technology that we're continuously improving, that now can go up to 100 mega symbols in the return, meaning that you can really blend in all types of different users within the same capacity pool and flex and mix all different service offerings with a single return technology being MXDMA. So we continue to improve on offering technologies to actually respond to that clear demand for better services and for better availability.
And what's your take?
An interesting element to add as well, if you look at the data here, is that latency is not too much a concern of the respondents, right? So that's also interesting to note, that they prioritize other elements in favor of latency of the services, while it's still a very hot topic today, if you think about it. But then on the other hand, it's also a bit logical, right? Because for many use cases, it's not so critical. We have optimized our satcom technologies already for years to work and optimize user experience independent of the latency of the satellite links, right? So that's also shown here in the results of this survey, is that for most use cases and for most end users, latency is not a key concern. Of course, any improvement is good, but it's not a key concern. So that's an interesting observation. And the other one, of course, is what Friedrich was already a bit referring to as well, that, it also clearly shows that end users are not willing to compromise service quality, service level agreements in favor of lower cost services, right? So the first priority is to have the right level of service. That's clear. And then the cost of the services comes after that. While it's also an interesting element today, if you look in our industry, we see new entrants which are doing the opposite, right? They are providing services which are focused on throughput, which are focused on cost, but without any service levels. But clearly the survey shows that service levels and service quality are key criteria for our customer base.
Let me just ask one more question on that particular question, because I thought that was one of the really interesting questions in the survey. You talked about latency, low cost, reliability, availability. Given where we are in the cycle of new satellite launches and the onset of some of these big constellations, how do you see the answer of this particular question, say in 5 years' time? And let me start with you, Frederick, then go to Jo.
Well, as you know, we are in an exciting period in our industry, so a lot will change over the next 5 years. And I think all those new satellite technologies, together with the ground technology evolutions that are taking place, will improve the service offering. I think the requests, everything that is happening in the space industry is in response to a direct request from those end users. So all those new technologies, they will deliver new and better services. They will open new markets as well. Concerns with respect to availability, universal availability, will, for instance, also be solved by having programmable satellites and having multi-orbit services. So I think indeed, if you would ask this survey 5 years from now, you would have a different picture, because a lot is changing in our industry, as you know.
Jo, any follow-up on that?
Well, additionally, I think what we also see moving forward is more a blending of terrestrial and satellite coming together, right? And where terrestrial satellite connectivity will be more abstracted from the end users, so that they don't even feel and see anymore how services are delivered, right? So that means that we see a future where the end users will be consuming connectivity, will be running their applications without even knowing at a certain point in time whether they are connected over satellite or terrestrial, or a combination of both, right? Where it's a blend of terrestrial and satellite connectivity, and providing a hybrid solution as well. So that's interesting, and I think that's something that we'll see evolve certainly over the next couple of years.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's a great start to the conversation. We're now going to talk a little bit about cloud technology. And again, this was one of the key questions of the survey. And ultimately, I think one of the key themes of this survey as a whole, not just when we're talking about cloud, is that when asked about how technology can enable their business, end users talked less of reduced costs and more of expanding connectivity services with added services, turnkey solutions. So, is this a bit of a surprise? And let me go to Jo with this one.
I think it's an interesting question, and the answer clearly shows, and it's a bit in line with the previous answer, right? Where the community is looking for is better services, more services, which is good, right? Because that's exactly what is providing room for innovation in our industry as well. So what you see is that cloud and edge computing are a means to enable more value-added services, to deliver more advanced applications in such a way that customers can adopt optimized remote operations, business processes, workflows. Well, if you look back a bit, satellite remote site, often they were using specific processes, trying to find an optimal solution to work behind the satellite terminal. But yeah, based on what we see happening here in edge compute and cloud and all these value-added applications, this will change, and end users will be able to operate, let's say, independently, whether it's a satellite link or a terrestrial link. They will be able to start using the same business processes and consume cloud and cloud applications as they would do on any other site in the world.
Okay, Frederick, did you have anything to add, or shall we go on to talk a little bit about standards?
No, I think maybe it's clear also that cloud has a different meaning for end users and for, let's say, the satellite industry players like us. For us, it's an enabler to bring some of the new technologies. We always are in need, the satellite players or the satellite suppliers, let's say, are always in need to bring more scalability, to bring more flexibility, and that's also something where cloud will help us. End users are more like, what are the new capabilities from an end user point of view? So that might also be different between those two, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting findings. And, I think, one of the things we did with this survey, and I hope people who are watching this can see in the slides, is we looked at some of the differences between what the end users, whether that was government or commercial, and what the satellite industry was thinking. And what comes out of this survey is there are some subtle differences. There are obviously some strong similarities, but there are some differences in how, I guess, the two the two groups view this. So let's talk about standards. We know this is a big topic in our industry, and we want to talk about the importance of standards-based services and services orchestration, 3GPP, 5G, and MEF to a customer's business. So if we can get this slide on here, and again, there were some very interesting findings here in terms of the importance. So let's talk a little bit about the importance here of these standards as we're trying to develop these new business models going forward. Frederick, what was your take here when looking at some of the results from here?
Well, I think the results speak for themselves. I think everybody thinks it's very important. I think everybody sees also that standardization, and then specifically the convergence with terrestrial standards, is a means to really deliver that seamless integration that you also talked about, to start delivering connectivity services which blend satcom and terrestrial together, so that eventually end users will not even notice anymore by which technology they are connected. And I think what's very interesting at this moment in time is that we have the release 17 of 5G 3GPP that has been standardized as the first release that actually also includes satellite communication as part of the 3GPP standard. I think that's a very important milestone. It's still some, let's say, more simple use cases that are supported today, but I mean that will improve. And so release 18, release 19 will support more and more of the satellite communication use cases that our customers need. And so the importance and the benefits of 3GPP for satellite communication use will only increase over the next couple of years.
Okay, I want to ask a specific question based on the findings and look at the time frame in terms of when 5G, 3GPP standardized and orchestrated satcom services will be offered. Again, there was one of the findings that stood out in this survey here is one of the questions talked about the time frame that companies will adopt these services that we just talked about here. Over 34% of end users, pretty big number, said they don't know. But probably more interestingly, 28% of the satellite industry said they don't know. Is this somewhat worrying that such a large percentage, because we've been talking about standards obviously for quite a long time. Is it somewhat worrying that such a large percentage of not just the end users but the satellite industry are not sure when this is going to happen? I mean, Frederick, I'll go to you, and then you can come in afterwards.
Yeah, maybe we can also bring up that slide that actually illustrates that.
You've got the slide up now.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
So here we go. So Frederick, very interesting figures, and particularly the don't know figures. I mean, they were So give us your take on that.
I think this is not that abnormal. I think it always takes time for new technologies, and certainly when they're quite radically new, it takes time to adopt. I mean, and also the conversion of standards is a slow process. Not only in the satellite world, but also on the terrestrial side. I mean, if you look at the convergence of technologies on the terrestrial side, there's still a gap between what technologies are being used for cellular communication, what is being used for wireline, and they try to bring that together as well, slowly. But I mean, that takes time. So you also always have early adopters and laggards. I think that's normal. It just shows also the importance of this new ground movement that we started, where we try to let's say educate the industry, try to bring them forward. So that people see the benefit, but it's also clear that the importance of standards is not the same for all type of use cases. And so some users will see more benefits, and then, for instance, the ones that are offering not only satellite communications but also have a terrestrial offering next to that, for them, of course, being able to align all those different technologies, make sure that they can use the same backend infrastructure to manage their terrestrial networks as well as their satellite networks is, of course, much more important than for pure satellite players that are operating in a specific niche market, for instance. So I think it's clear that there is a big variety among the different users, and it doesn't completely surprise me, and it shows that we still have a lot of work to
do. Yo, did you have anything to add on that one?
Well, yeah, I think Frederik already told a lot about it, right? The end users, they don't care too much about how it's delivered, right? They want the services that are needed. But if you look at the supply side and the operator side, yeah, there's more immediate short-term benefits as well from standardization, right? They can integrate their systems with the 5G core and backend systems around that, so they can leverage terrestrial technologies. It's about blending as well the technologies, right? Yeah, that's when it comes to it enables to start running heterogeneous networks, right? Where you have a network of networks, where you can kind of as an end user consume services without knowing from one network, which is a satellite network, and you go into a terrestrial network as well, and then back in a satellite network as needed, without even seeing that, without even feeling that, right? It's all done on the back-end side, let's say, across the different networks, across the different operators. And a good use case for that one is, for example, in the maritime industry, imagine a ship is in the port, it will consume services from a terrestrial 5G networks, it will move over sea, it will be consuming services from the satellite network. And then it goes back to a port where it connects seamlessly again to the port infrastructure in 5G, right? Without the end user even knowing and feeling that he has transitioned 3 networks. So that's really where the future lies in terms of standardization and the adoption of 5G and 3GPP, in my opinion. So it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with you. Just one very quick follow-up, and we'll keep this slide up, because there's one thing I wanted to highlight here. The satellite industry seems to think we'll get to a more standardized environment much quicker. Over 36%, in fact, almost 37%, expect 5G, 3GPP standardized and orchestrated satcom services within 3 years. For end users, that's over 10, almost 11% less. Yo, why the difference?
Well, I think it's a bit along the lines of what we said before, right? The operators on the supply side, it's about how you deliver. So they are further, let's say, earlier in the trajectory as well to adopt new technologies. Typically, they also serve multiple end users. Like Frederik was saying, some end users will have a bigger benefit versus other end users or vertical markets. While on the supply side, the operator side, you often are serving multiple vertical markets and segments as well. So I think that kind of shows that on the supply side, things are moving a bit faster and are looked at in a wider perspective, of course, than specific end users, where it depends on their use case, of course, where it makes the most sense.
No, fantastic. Very interesting findings. This survey said we had a fantastic response not just from the satellite industry, but from end users within government and commercial. And there's a lot of interesting findings, which we're really just sort of, scratching the surface of here. I want to sort of get sort of the final sort of takeaways now. I mean, there was a lot of very interesting questions in this survey, some somewhat surprising findings that we've discussed. What did you get out of this survey? I mean, there's a lot of great information, but I'm just sort of curious what both of you, what were your sort of, I guess, number one key takeaways? And I'll start with you, Yo, and then we'll go to Frederick.
Yeah, I think for me, the key one definitely shown here as well is that cost of the services is important, but yeah, the end users are not willing to compromise user experience, service level, service capabilities, service levels, right? That's very, very important one. And I think that's also has been the success of our industry, right? Is to deliver high quality services to the users. And they also appreciate the value for that, right? Certainly if you see what's happening as well with new entrants. And if you look back, we had a little bit a history where a similar thing was happening when consumer broadband emerged on geo and Ka bands. Also, people were thinking that it would replace the enterprise vertical market VSAT services, but it didn't, because it didn't deliver the right service quality and such, right? So we really need optimized services as well, and then make them cost effective, but for sure have service quality. I think the second key takeaway as well is that customers are definitely, and end users are definitely looking for more solutions, which allows them to do more advanced remote operations, business processes, right? That's where the services are enabling cloud technologies, edge cloud applications, right? This is gonna be an important innovation factor as well around satellite services, and where we'll see this being rolled out more and more and more towards the edge of the network, which is remote side of the satellite network. So yeah, very interesting evolution, and all driven by cloud and 5G, 3GPP standardization, in my opinion.
And Frederick?
Yeah, for me, one of the key takeaways was that the typical concerns that you have with satellite communication, its cost, its latency, that those were really not high on the answers, or not listed as very important by the respondents. I think that's very important, and that also shows that, for instance, with latency, I think we have the technology in place to mitigate that properly, and it's no longer seen as a big concern. Another observation, of course, is the importance that the respondents put on new technologies. We didn't talk about it too much here, but I mean, there was also sections in the survey around new satellite and payload technologies that was also considered very important, and also standardization, as you already mentioned. And you see that there is still a big difference between the responses of different players within our industry. So it shows that we still have an opportunity in front of us to bring all those people forward. And I think that's also what we try to do with our new ground movement, is to really lead the industry and make sure that we can deliver those new technologies specifically on the ground to our customers and to our industry in general.
No, fantastic. I mean, Frederick, Yo, really excellent to have the opportunity to talk to both of you today. I agree with both of you. There was lots of interesting findings here, particularly around, around the need for better technology solutions rather than cost. And it was also, I think, as you pointed out, Frederick, where latency comes into the conversation now as well. I mean, that perhaps was a little surprising given the amount of conversation we've had over the last few years regarding latency. So I just want to sort of thank you both. There's more on this. We've been working together with ST Engineering iDirect on a new ground platform, and our goal is to provide cutting edge intelligence, surveys, comments, articles, as we look at not just what's happening in terms of ground technology, but also the needs of end users going forward, and how our whole industry can look to build successful businesses, successful business models going forward. So Jo, Frederick, I'd like to thank you both, and thank ST Engineering iDirect, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.